Hey everybody, this is StageCraft. My name is Alex.
And my name is Don.
And today's episode...
And my name is Kat.
And on today's episode, walking down the path, I think right now, is...
yes!
Amanda MacKaye. This is a wonderful time. We were just doing the intro. I'm Alex. We were just doing the intro on the air, so it worked out perfectly as you walked into the studio, if you will.
Well, you know, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I did not study for the test.
You did not study for a test?
No.
No one does.
Well, we're gonna probably just ask you off the wall questions that
I expect nothing less of you.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, dealing with everything, you know, including people at Fort Reno, not necessarily the shows, but you know, just people dealing with people.
I know.
Dealing with people and dealing with people.
I just came from dealing with people.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. With Fort Reno?
People are terrible.
Well, they just sometimes they have a hard time communicating what they want or doing what they say they want. Or
As abstractly as you could describe the people that were terrible,
Yeah.
could you describe how they were being terrible?
They were being terrible by not communicating what they needed. And putting another person in a very difficult position of having to understand and speak for them when they really shouldn't have to. And, you know, saying hard things is hard, but not saying them's even harder.
There's one of like a quick abstract way. They were people putting people in a position.
Yes, I'm going to give them grace and think that they were not doing it intentionally. They were just being cowards. But it didn't change what was happening.
Or some people just are flighty and I forgot to tell you, whatever.
Yeah. But, you know, it's at a certain point. And so then it takes a third person to say, stop listening to those people. They're fucked up.
Sure.
Just read between the lines. They're telling you something. Read between the lines and let's move on.
Yeah.
But can you say fucked up on your show, Don?
What?
Can you say
Yes.
fucked up on your
You
show?
can. You can.
Yep.
All right.
Only if it's descriptive.
Yeah. It's
All right.
not the worst thing that's been said on the
Hey, you're gonna have to go down, dig
Yeah.
deep, dig deep.
Yep.
That must be hard when you're, you maybe wake up with a positive attitude or today's going to be okay, and then you finish the day after dealing with people and you're like, I hate people. I hate people. But I'll tell you, after this show, you're going to like people again.
I don't hate people. I feel the
It's
suffering.
day-to-day, yeah.
I feel the suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you close to being, to having your roster all set up, or is it you still
Today was going to be
tough
the day,
slog?
but people got in the way.
Oh, damn.
So I'm going to have to, I don't know, I'll be up all night, I guess, sending heartbreaking letters or something. I don't know. I mean, it's in my head. I have to make it reality. Speaking of things that are hard, I mean, it is very hard to tell people no.
Yeah.
But Fort Reno is going to go forward this summer.
Oh, 100%.
That's good. That's good. Just to get it clear to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. There's nothing in the way.
Do we have a date yet?
Opening night will be July, I think the Monday is the 18th. Yeah.
All right.
You mentioned some time ago that it was mostly older bands that... Was that true?
Well, I mean, Fort Reno exists to provide space for everybody. I would love to stage bands that are younger kids because we are very short on opportunities for people under the age of 21 to play places, to get stage experience. And so, but it's trending the opposite direction. There aren't that many kids who start bands. I have my own theories, having been a parent recently and worked in high schools, and having friends who have kids and seeing that everything is organized, and kids don't hang out with kids on their street anymore. They don't, or like they're in school together, but they don't live anywhere near each other.
I like this. I would like you to explore this a little bit. The structure, and you're talking about the rigid structure and framework of the activities
Yeah.
and such. Will you talk a little bit about that? How
Sure.
you found it to be?
Yes, you're listening to StageCraft, WERA FM, with Amanda MacKaye.
There, I assume, I didn't read any of these books, but I assume that there was a host of books that were printed maybe 20 years ago that said, man, to have a well-rounded child, they've got to have this, and this. And so people immediately started signing their kids up for everything. They've got to do soccer, they've got to do baseball, it's spring, it's football season. They've also got to take a flute, they've got to do this, they've got to have a volunteer activity. All great things. But if it's not child-led, it just becomes another class. That being said, I totally understand. The United States of America has a fucking daycare problem. Parents are working constantly, and they have children, and they're afraid to leave them alone. I'll leave that on the table. That's an individual's choice. But the reality is that children are getting out of school, and there's no one at home, and parents don't feel comfortable having them home alone. They need something to do, so they get a class after school. There are, obviously kids can take music classes, and there are things like Bach to Rock where they can have a band, but it is the intention is so different. It's not an organic thing of, man, I saw this band on TV and they were so cool, I want to see what happens. It's not like what I grew up with. I grew up with people who were spontaneously like trying to figure out how to do things. And when I, in the 70s, when I was growing up, there was, I think, soccer, but not like it is today. There was not after school stuff like it is today. And it's an interesting balance, because then what happens is, like, what I find is that now I get a lot of stuff from people who are like, I'm 45 years old, I just started my first band, I just taught myself how to play bass, which is cool in itself.
Yeah, I've run into a lot of 40-year-old teenagers recently. Yeah, and I think it's great. They're finally finding their voice.
Yeah.
And they know that there are no rules.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to sort of figure that out. With the children and the regimented schedules, and I'm sure you've experienced this with parents, like trying to schedule something with a parent is impossible, right? Mm-hmm. Because even if you do have something scheduled, God help you, there's a rain date for another game that happened, and now your day is taken away from you. Like the kid can't miss one effing game or something.
Right.
It's insanity. I never thought about it from the perspective, though, of with the rigidity, there's no exploration of boredom and curiosity that then takes place because everything is sort of planned out for you. But, like, why did that happen? I mean, I know we're getting a little into theory, but just for fun, just talk about it. Why did it happen that way?
My personal belief is that because, what happened in the 80s, late the 70s and 80s was the whole stranger danger thing.
Yeah.
And the 24-hour news cycles came into place, and people started hearing about, missing kids and thinking it was an epidemic.
Right.
When it was misleading news information, and people became totally focused on, you can never leave a child alone because the boogeyman is out there. Right. I'm not saying that bad things don't happen. They definitely do, but not to the degree. I mean, we've the pendulum has swung so far in the other direction that you now have kids who are terrified that something's out there, and but in reality, there's nothing out there, or if there is something out there, you're never going to know because you're not going out there. And that's just me. I also grew up in a situation where we were basically told there's the door, go outside, don't come back. But I also grew up in a neighborhood where, you know, if the parent lost sight of their child for, you know, a little while, they called the neighbor. The neighbor said, "Oh yeah, they're over here." You know, there was a unity in the street. And even like my father still lives in the house I grew up in. There's some unity in the street, but not in the same way. It's just not, you know, it's not the same sort of freewheeling child-led thing.
So we're talking today with Amanda MacKaye.
She's here. I swear to God.
There's been a shift in what it is to be a neighbor.
Right.
You know, when I first moved in with my now husband, when, you know, we were just dating, I moved in with him. He lived in Falls Church. And I was like determined to meet the neighbors. And every day I would go home from work, I sat on the stoop, and my plan was to talk to everybody when they walked their dogs or whatever. Nobody walks in the suburbs.
Right.
They
And
drove.
nobody sits on the stoop either.
Right.
Yeah.
They drove into their driveways. They went in the back door. You never saw them again.
Right.
Yeah, you know, Alex was talking about something before you came about earbuds. How, you know, a lot of people I run into on the street have earbuds in, and they do not make eye contact.
Yep.
That's sort of the modus operandi.
Yeah. Yeah. And where we live now, we've been there for 5 years. Our across the street neighbor 6 months ago, I tried to turn around in her driveway, and she was like, "Who are you? What, do you need me? Are you looking for me?" And I was like, "No, I'm your neighbor. I live across the street."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, did you get a new car?" I'm like, "Nope, same car we had when we moved in, right across the street. It's been parked there."
Yeah.
But it was bizarre to me.
Yeah.
But they drive into their garage.
Yeah.
Garage door closes. They go into the house. They never come out. And I don't know. Like it's very, very weird to me. I know the neighbors. I know the 3 houses that we're in a line with, and that's it.
Yeah, the price you pay for nothing bad happening is you have no connections.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard. But what's funny is that the people that we live in this little, you know, strip with, they are like me. They're looking for that neighborhood. They don't understand why it's not there. So we're all borrowing a teaspoon of sugar from each other, you know.
Can you talk a little bit about what in an idyllic setting, is that how you say that? Idyllic.
Yes.
Idyllic setting. What does it mean to be a neighbor with someone?
It means. Oh man, we're getting home late. Can you go on my back porch and find my hide a key and let the dogs out?
Oh yes. God,
Or
yes.
honestly, what I just came from was our former neighbors. She's in she's in a medical situation, and she doesn't have anybody. She has me, and that's what neighbors are.
Yeah.
I know her, but it's not like, it's just that when she needed to move and she had nobody, Alan and I just went and picked up her stuff and moved it. You know, like it's just, you just do things.
But you don't live right in the city or city proper, do you?
I live in Arlington County, Virginia, Don.
Yeah, but okay, so there is some concentration there.
I live in a freaking neighborhood.
Yeah.
I live in a completely planned, considered neighborhood. It has a name and everything.
We'll
it's
bleep it
the
out. Is
people.
it Cherrydale?
Yeah.
No, it's Forest Glen.
Forest Glen, yeah.
It's the smallest neighborhood in the county. It shouldn't be a neighborhood. It should be part of Arlington Mill, because I think it's 20 houses. It's clearly, they haven't done it yet. I'm not going to be surprised when the project that's going on about, the redlining, that Forest Glen's going to be like, oh yeah, every single house not allowed for anybody who was not white
Sure.
and Christian.
So which neighborhood's Forest Glen? Which street is that on? I used to be in Arlington.
It's South 7th. It's if you know where the Arlington Mill Community Center is,
Yeah.
we're right behind that.
That is so with those like double-decker houses.
No, they're the people who are anti-missing middle
Yeah.
love us because we are big houses on big lots that could easily have probably a duplex or even a triplex, but it's this is the way it's supposed to be.
I'm convinced that if you create your own spell, it has a greater effect on your life. But very many people don't have the confidence to do this as beginners. So I think a simple spell is to light the flame of a candle and to sprinkle a circle of salt around the area that holds the candle and you. And then write down on a piece of paper what it is you want to accomplish in a very simple statement, maybe a sentence or two, and then burn this in the flame of the candle, all the while concentrating very dynamically upon the effect of the flame. And when you have burned this to an ash, then you know that what you want is about to come your way. The main purpose in the practice of witchcraft is to generate within yourself a very high level of energy that will then carry you successfully through all situations. So the main point is to psych yourself up and reach some kind of an emotional, physical, intellectual high. And this is done through a very rigid, disciplined method of performing a ritual. The people who say they are witches, and there are very many thousands of them in the United States, may or may not be witches. That I don't know. I haven't gone through any spiritual.
Our house we bought from the original owners.
Whoa.
They were there for 45 years. And so, but very slowly, with just some new people just moved in down the street. And very slowly it's happening. And so I'm, just at the point where we're like, okay, maybe we should just get out of here and leave and find, buy one of the duplexes a block away because that's got neighborhood.
Right.
This is, drive into your yard, drive into your garage and, don't talk to anybody.
Yeah, it's like everyone's in their pod in the Matrix or something.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be people that just sort of drive into their garage and
Sure.
go in the house, but it's a matter of like, where do the majority of the people stand? Like
Yes.
here, I mean, we just had a street cookout last night.
Yeah.
And, we'll have a band playing on the front lawns occasionally.
Yeah. And
people show up with lawn chairs.
right. And that's the thing is that you can, and Glover Park, where I grew up, that's kind of happening again, but for a long stretch, it was not like that. It was very much like doors closed, no one talking. Who are those people? Do you live here? I saw a strange person. I'm going to call the police.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm not a strange person. I live here.
Sometimes I think it takes someone to spur it on, like go around and, get signatures for a petition for whatever, birdhouses on the street or something.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes somebody, I'm not going to say who, to write things in their driveway about, be a good neighbor. Or just, hi, neighbor.
Yeah.
Because it is, it is, there's nothing wrong with keeping to yourself except for when someone is trying to acknowledge you. If I'm trying to say hello to you.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about shunning. I mean, that's literally
Yes.
shunning someone, which is
Yeah.
like the cruelest punishment there is.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit, this is just my own feeling. Usually what hangs me up from saying hello to my neighbors is when you get you have to show your ass a little bit. Like, you got to, like, put yourself out there. And when you get to the point where you get shut down once or twice, like the other day, I know this is not my neighbor. The other day I was walking a dog, a golden retriever, maybe like the happiest dog that there is, right? Walking down the street, I see this guy, I make eye contact, I just give a little hello smile, looks me straight in the eyes and goes, "F off."
Hey.
And I was like,
Wow.
you know, I mean, and so, and it didn't like shut me down for the rest of the day, but it took like 10% of my like, you know, of my like.
Was he somebody you actually recognized?
No, he didn't know
Okay.
me from Adam, which is fine. You know,
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with him. But that's just sometimes those
yeah.
moments when you're like, okay, do I say hello to the neighbor today? Do I feel like getting the?
That's his armor, though.
Yeah.
That's his armor.
Yeah.
He's putting up a defense. I mean, you know, getting it back to performers. I mean, a lot of performers do that.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
they can get up
Sure.
on stage, but there can be a big wall between them and the audience.
Sure. I mean, I was friends with a band that was their intention. They wanted to create a sound that upset the audience and made them back away from the stage.
Really?
And I mean, I spent a long time in meditation with them about what a ridiculous idea that was. I was like, you guys are nice people. You make good music. Why do you want to upset the audience? Why do you want them to feel pushed away?
Why did they?
They couldn't answer the question. They just thought it was funny, or I don't.
Is it funny though?
No,
It's
And-
not.
No, and that's what I told him. I said, it's not funny. I
What
love.
if- what if
I
you-
said,
what if
I
you were
love
one of
you
the
guys.
band members? Would it be funny then? You think?
No, I don't think so.
Have you ever done something to get a rise out of someone with no real reason behind it?
No, because I don't really.
Some people don't do that.
I
sort of
don't
thing.
do that.
Yeah,
I'm-
some people do though.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Some people experiment.
Some people experiment.
Right.
Yeah.
But also some people do it because they are in a space in their life where I'm going to reject you before you can reject me.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then there's somebody who's in the band with you who doesn't feel that way but doesn't know how to negotiate that space with you.
right.
But you know what it ultimately it came down to was talking to them about, because then they would get upset that nobody would come to their shows. And I said, are you f***ing kidding me? Like, of course they're not coming to your shows. You guys act like assholes,
You literally want to push people away.
and you've accomplished that.
Yeah.
So if you want people to enjoy your show, you should be making them feel welcome. It doesn't mean you can't play aggressive music or whatever, but
Right.
don't, honestly, I just told them, like, you don't need to be as loud as you are. The loudness is not helping your sound. It's not making it sound better.
That's a T-shirt for you right there. The loudness is not helping your
Right.
sound.
Well, but
Everyone's going to think it's the band, the
yeah,
loudness.
but
though.
remember, back in the '60s, and the back of albums, play this record loud, because louder usually sounds better.
if
That's
if
sort
it's
of the
too
assumption.
loud, you're too old, Don.
There does become a point. I mean, I play with, matter of fact, the Dewdrop Inn, talking about it. I play with a band there that I love very dearly, these people. But after I finished, and there was a pretty good crowd there, they played, and it was unbearably
Yeah.
loud.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 Marshall stacks.
Don't need
and
'em.
They just had them. And towards the end of the first song, everybody cleared out.
Yeah.
Don't they get the message?
I don't think they do, actually. I mean, I've been in just venues, and it's not the band's control. The band, where it's just the venue itself is just loud.
Right. If it's the venue's control, yeah.
And I don't understand that. I mean,
Well, I think if I'm going to be prescriptive, usually when things go awry in an environment like a live environment, whether it be the band, the bartender, the dorm person, the wait staff, whoever, it's when people start operating from a position of their own ego versus like the idea that we're there to create a welcoming environment. Like it can go haywire really quick, and the sound is a great example. Like
Yeah.
when someone's like, I'm going to turn this up to where I like it. Well, that's not appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish here. They have to work in symbiosis with everyone who's there for the evening, the sound person, the person who's the bartender, the person who's the door person, like all that. is working on something that's bigger than yourself. But as soon as you start saying like, well, I know the way this needs to be done, well, then shit goes left every time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think of course, if I ruled the world,
Yeah,
I
do
mean,
it.
if I ran a club, I would cut the volume down because it's not helping. I mean, if people are leaving,
Right.
it's not helping anybody.
You don't need to beat nature into submission. Why be hostile to nature? Because after all, you are a symptom of nature. You, as a human being, you grow out of this physical universe in just exactly the same way that an apple grows off an apple tree.
Hi, you're listening to Amanda MacKaye on 96.7 FM. That's WERA, Arlington Radio.
I hear from other people, it's not just me, like such and such place is really loud. I can't be in there for very long. Eventually, they just stop coming. There's no, when it becomes an aesthetic, if it becomes part of the, punk shows are supposed to be loud. Then you're not listening to the music. As a venue, you're not doing service to what you're trying to present. If you are deciding how things are supposed to be, then why even choose bands to play there? Just get house bands, because you can't put the same thing on every single band.
Right.
And volume is, I mean, even at Fort Reno, we had one show many years ago. The sound man, his truck broke down en route. He comes from Pennsylvania twice a week. The guy's nuts in the best way. He comes from Pennsylvania twice a week to run sound. He brings all the gear, runs the whole thing. And his truck broke down en route, and we scrambled some people together to put together a PA, just a little vocal PA. And it was a great show. It was quiet, but it wasn't. But it was informative because it really helped everyone. Like, oh, it just doesn't need to be that loud here,
But there is always the band that, on sound check, they have it turned up to a certain amount, and then, after, when we're going on stage, I'm going to turn it up now.
Yeah.
It's always the case.
Yeah. And if I was in that band, I'd go and turn them down.
Right. Well, yeah. and it's I kind of think it's a wanting to be noticed type thing, where it's almost like, hey.
Well, I don't think you're saying anything that's not understood. That if you're saying that bands sometimes try to get negative attention as well as positive attention, I don't think you're saying anything that's not totally understood, right?
Look at the society. Everyone has taken that hook.
Who doesn't like a
the
little
wrong
negative
degree.
attention every once in a while?
Yeah.
It's not good for you, but hey.
Even bad publicity is publicity.
Right.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, how
No,
many
thank you.
articles? Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like that's all well and good if I had some cash to back it up, but negative attention for me. I mean, that cost me like money. Versus somebody who has a publicist who can write a negative attention article,
Right.
and click farm it.
Right.
Whew. It just hurts my head to even think about. Let's talk about positive attention, though. So, as someone who books a fairly seminal show for the DC concert series, how would you describe what does a band need to present to you for you to know that they're worth it to be on a stage like Fort Reno?
Man, if I could explain that, people would be so much happier.
I know, right? But we're just riffing it, though. We're just riffing it.
It is. It is a thing that can't. You can't really describe it. There are some basics, like you have to be from the DC area, which we loosely define as the Beltway. But as rents increase and whatever, people have to move further and away, and we have to just take all that into consideration. But also, it's small things. Well, it might be small to some people. It's huge to me. Being a professional musician is fantastic, but if you can get a gig somewhere else, you're not Fort Reno may not be the place for you. It's a very hard place to play. It's having played there, it's actually not that fun sometimes because it's hot, it's buggy, it doesn't sound good. The stage is rickety. People are probably definitely not listening to you.
This sounds so amazing.
I know. And you don't get paid.
Yeah.
And, if it rains, your show's canceled and it's not rescheduled. It's a rough gig.
I would refute. I think it does sound good.
For you, because you're Don.
Aw.
What does that matter?
I don't know.
In BD, no big deal.
I think it's hard. I think it sounds good for the audience.
Yes.
It's a hard stage to play. For the player has a hard time.
Yeah. I'm a person who I do not like to rely on monitors at all.
Yeah.
But that, I don't know, it seems to work because I tend to move towards the edge of the stage. I want to be as close to the audience as possible to hear what they're hearing. Obviously, I'm not doing that. But if you are relying a lot on monitor mix, I don't think they have enough time to really get things going. Yes, you're listening to StageCraft, WERA FM, with Amanda MacKaye.
No, you're never going to get a full sound check at Fort Reno because, I'm trying to get as much out there in the time we have, which is 2.5 hours, I think, when it's all said and done. And but in a strange way, and this is where some it's just may not be for some people, and this is going to come out very awkwardly, but the Fort Reno concerts are not necessarily about the music. It is a way to bring people together, and certainly in the last, I'd say, decade, it's part of the mission has evolved to be a way for people to understand that other people, you may not know them, but they're not strangers. We have a common link.
I like how this ties into our earlier conversation about the community.
It's something I think about a lot every day.
So how does that influence the musicians? Obviously, picking musicians who are inside the Beltway is a part of that because these are people theoretically within the community that you're presenting them to. It's like, hey, come see the people you might know. What else goes into the decision making when trying to program something that's community focused rather than say I'm trying to put on the most amazing rock show that there ever was?
Well, that sort of happens naturally because if I am limiting the scope to bands that, they're sort of like misfits, they can't really go somewhere else either because, they're too young or, as this DC area has changed, it's harder and harder to get a show if you don't have any following at all. And so if you can't get a show, probably Fort Reno is going to be a good place for you to go. Or if you're playing something that is super weird, and that is, we've had some super weird stuff, but also it's a great place. And this has been in the last 5 years, it's become a thing where it's the only place that some band that's they're all parents. It's the only place their kids can see what they do. And that has become crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's important for me to pay attention to that part, because a lot of what got me started with wanting to help at Fort Reno was when, I don't remember exactly what year cable came to DC, but I noticed almost immediately the shift that was happening as MTV was presenting music.
Mm-hmm.
And it was weird.
Can you talk a little bit about it? What some of the things you remember?
Well, just that it was in my peer group, or just people who were like a little bit younger than me even, it was very much about the visual and less about the audio.
Mm-hmm.
But also it was you could tell this, you could almost feel the glass
Mm-hmm.
between the stage and the audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was weird. And because people didn't know how to respond to a band that was playing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it really bummed me out a lot.
I like what you're talking about. It's there's almost like a metaphorical screen that was being put in place as like the television became the reality, right? Like that distance started becoming there because people didn't know how to interact.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. And that sort of collided with, like, that introduction to music collided with the whatever the year that punk broke, 1991. And, then everybody was like, oh, my God, I'm getting $1 million contract from Geffen Records or whatever. And everyone sort of got on that tip.
Mm-hmm.
And it created this weird phenomena of I don't even know how to describe it. It was almost like not really understanding how to be a beginning band.
Yeah, it's almost like the music is no longer among us.
Right.
It's up there.
Yes. And it was, and what for me as I gravitated towards Fort Reno was that kids were no longer having the experience that I had of watching bands when they're young. Like real bands you could go up and touch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They could see it all on TV. They could see all the famous people, and all they knew about was fame.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not seeing people trip over their guitar cord, or the PA go out, or like hitting a bad chord, or whatever.
People playing music bad. Like that's an experience that's not
or
as
just
often
playing
as
music that was not like that was actually written by those people.
Sure.
They were and so that came into my head, and I latched onto it. And when I had the opportunity to start working with Fort Reno, it became sort of that I started developing a mission about, we have a duty as the elders or whatever of the DC music scene. We have a duty to pass it backwards. Mm-hmm. It's not just forwards. It's sometimes you got to go the other way, and just say, like, I'm thinking backwards in people who are smaller than me and younger than me. Mm-hmm. They're behind me, even though if they're ahead of me too. But we have to be the people to continue that language of DIY and make a band.
So how would you describe it? Because, if someone your age had tried to get you into things back when you were like 16, 15 in that area, you wouldn't have responded the same way. Even if they brought you some good shit, you might have responded a particular way because it came from someone of a certain generation. Is that true? Not true? Like if a 50-year-old came to the 16-year-old you and said, yo, I got the inside track on some good music, some DIY stuff. I'm going to tell you about how things should be. How do you think you would have reacted in that moment?
Yes, you're listening to StageCraft, WERA FM, with Amanda MacKaye.
Yo, I got the inside track on some good music, some DIY stuff. I'm going to tell you about how things should be. How do you think you would have reacted in that moment? Accepting, not accepting?
Probably accepting, but it's hard for me to actually say because, my experience was. I mean, I didn't have a choice. Almost,
Of course.
you know.
I'm only going anecdotally.
I mean,
my nieces and nephews.
I would
yeah.
say this, that I did an interview a few weeks ago with a person who's an 8th grader at the school I graduated from, and you know, she could choose any topic to do a research paper on in American history, any topic she wanted. I don't really know how her brain worked on this, and she couldn't explain it, but she decided that her topic was going to be DC punk versus LA punk.
Ooh. Spicy meatball.
Yeah. And because exactly one teacher that I had remains at that school, he said, I know the person you should talk to, and asked if I'd do an interview with her. And I said, sure. I don't know anything about LA punk. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I don't know anything.
But you get your side of it.
Yeah. But what was cool about the experience was that she had, you know, her parents were my age, and so they were sort of dabblers. So she had some experience of old punk, and it sparked something in her. She really, you know, she was drawn to it. Bad Brains is one of her favorite bands. But our conversation was so impactful for her. She just was like, I'm not going to go to my next class. We're just going to keep talking. I'm like, whatever. I mean,
Great.
I'm fine with it. But she really was like, tell me about bands. Like, you know, let's figure something out. Like, I want to do more I want to hear more about bands, because we talked about Spotify and how that's her world. I don't even know how to Spotify at all. But, you know, so she is open to that there's more out there, but she doesn't know how to find it. Mm-hmm. And that is the sort of thing where that's exactly what you're describing. I'll be 53 this summer, and she's in 8th grade, however old that is.
I think it's super important for the parents to not be part of it. Because what I've run into constantly is, you know, because I mean, we run into some of the same circles. Some of like the kids, like when they talk to their parents a certain way, I'm always like, man, do you know how fucking cool your mom is? Like, do you know how cool your dad is? Like, they're like fucking awesome. Like,
sure.
Wow, how could you talk to them this way? You know, but then when like, you know, cool Aunt Roberta comes to town and she's like, yo, I got this band for you. Then all of a sudden the kids are all about it,
right.
You know? And so
right.
there is like, I think that's sort of what I allude to sometimes is like, there is a rejection of sort of like the parental figure. And you never want to seem too eager to be like, oh, they're listening to good music,
right.
Because you don't want your kid to be like, oh, you know, like I'm
But
not
a lot
into.
of bands grow out of that.
What's that?
A lot of bands grow out of that.
Sure,
The
out of a-
generational rejection.
The rejection, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally.
But when you're trying to instill a certain culture of a generation of music, it's like you don't want them to accept the opposite of what you're introducing when that stuff is principled and has foundations and stuff like that.
Right. But it is, I mean, I'll say this, that my method with all kinds of things is sort of fashioned after Diane Fossey, which is like, I'm just going to put this here, have it or don't. And that's the way I feel about the Fort Reno concerts, is like, here's this buffet.
That's a good way to do it. I
You know,
believe
show
that
up. If you don't like it, that's okay, because it's fucking free.
Yeah.
Who cares? You know?
People either find it and
Yeah.
they say, hey, this is a treasure,
Right.
or else they miss it.
Right. And, you know, and there's been a lot of pressure, like, why don't you advertise more? Why don't you do this? Why should I? I mean, it's here.
Yeah.
It's been running since 1968. We've missed 1 year. And it's here. And it's there for people to find. And the way the schedule, going back to your question about the bands, like the way that the bands are chosen is sort of, it is really mishmash on purpose, because I don't know what people are going to like. And that's not the point. I'm not trying to make a fun and, you know, thing. That's not, your enjoyment is not up to me. I'm putting this thing out there. If you like it, great. If you don't, also fine. And there's something for everybody, even if your thing is like, I just like to get my food at Whole Foods and like fall asleep in the grass. Fantastic.
Oh, you got to watch out, though. You're going to get lots of bites if you fall asleep in the grass. That's crazy. That's crazy. So if you were to describe to someone, let's say that someone had to take over the booking for you because you wanted to go take a vacation out in Colorado,
del
right?
Fuego.
Yeah, you just wanted to head out. So tell someone just in like a couple of sentences, like, here's how to program Fort Reno. This is how to do it.
Okay, I can tell you how to do it this year.
Yeah.
Because it literally is different every year. This year we have close to 3 times the number of submissions than we have space for.
That's great.
It is. It makes it very hard. So first you have to think about the sonic, tableau of the whole batch. And do you have 4 bands that sound kind of the same? You don't want too much samey. You want it to be a patchwork on purpose. And, so then it's sort of like trying to figure out, okay, well, how do you find what's curious about, and this is where it gets pretty tough for a lot of people because I am all about the curiosity. And so when I'm looking at bands, I'm thinking, what is this about? Either it's the name or the sound or it's something. If it makes me go like, what is this about? Then I'm like, okay, that's curious. That's interesting. But at the same time, I'm going to say, like, it also doesn't have to be interesting.
Wait. Doesn't have to be interesting.
Because, again, it's like, I'm not trying to... My feeling about the Fort Reno concert series is that it is not necessarily about a genre or professionality or the they don't even have to have been a band for very long. Like there's all these sort of things. It's not about that. It's about an intention, and that is why it's so hard to describe what you're supposed to submit or what we're going to choose, because intention is up to the listener. It's up to the viewer. And that's why it becomes this whole thing of like, you know it when you hear it. And when you just find like, oh man, I really like this. And it could be anything. It could be there was a band a few years ago that applied, and I'm not particularly into bluegrass music. I appreciate it. It's not really my thing. But this guy who just put together a bluegrass band, it was ripping. And I was like, that sounds good. You're going to go up against some kind of weird punk band. That's going to be great. And but it doesn't have to interest me. It doesn't, as the person who's booking, it doesn't necessarily have to interest me. It has to have a thing that I can't really describe to you that I'm sure you experience it in all kinds of things. People you meet.
It's literally how I make every decision in my life.
Right.
I don't know why I did that, but I did.
Well, I mean, even in the people you meet, you start talking to them, you're like, yeah, this is going nowhere. And it's not that they're a bad person, and it's not that they're not interesting. It's just, for whatever reason, that moment, there's no intention to the whole thing.
But you must have a feeling for your audience. Your audience kind of is looking for this or looking for that.
It's probably a terrible thing to say, but I don't really think about the audience that much.
They're a bunch of fickle people anyways.
Because, it's, in a way, it's not as harsh as fickle, but the thing about running a free outdoor concert series in the summer in a beautiful spot is that people love to go outside, and they love to have a reason to go do something. And so if you just give them a reason, like a concert,
yeah, you're providing the community.
Right. They'll go. They want to hang out with people, and they'll go. And it's great when they love what's happening. I can't think of too many nights when there was a mass exodus during one of the bands.
I was
You know what I
searching
mean?
my role. I was like, let me think about it. Have I ever? No, I've never seen it. Just from the lightning strikes. But so I am curious though, in terms of like, there's not, it's not like the bluegrass band, notwithstanding, there was a recognition of like, oh, this is kind of funky. People might dig this, but there's never a desire that you had, like the band we were speaking of earlier, where you're like, man, this is kind of fucked up. I'm going to see what happens when I put this on. Or is there? Do you ever have those moments too? Like, man, this band is going to be a bit of an assault.
To shock people.
Shock people.
Well, I mean, I thought it was going to be pretty shocking to people when I booked the Washington Bach consort. And it was. People were like, why are you having classical music? I'm like, well, little known fact, I love classical music. But also, there's punks who are part of the Washington Bach consort. Like, if you're doing your homework, you're going to find out that there's people who are in bands, they don't just play cello in a punk band. They also do it in the venues that are ascribed to what they are trained in. But it was an interesting evening because that was one of the nights when we had to do the most, like, I'm sorry, there's no alcohol allowed here.
Oh, classical people who listen to classical.
They thought they were a wolf trap.
They're always going to go for the wine. Yeah.
And it was fine because they were lovely people. They totally got it. But it was, but it really, and I don't remember, I've had them a few times because they can change players, so it's not like the same band.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was going to be crazier than people. People were a little like, oh, okay, weird. But that was shocking for me. I don't think I really do try to find a band that is just going to like, oh, this is going to be super weird. And I'll tell you, because some of the super weird stuff, it won't play well.
I have a seemingly unrelated question, but I swear it's related. When you cook, do you cook at all? Do you make?
I cook constantly.
How do you cook? Do you cook from recipes? Do you cook from like, I know these ingredients go together? How do you like to cook? What's your preference?
I do both.
Mm-hmm.
I will read. So actually, I just did this. I made a cake for my dad's birthday. I'd been saving this recipe because I saw it and I was like, my dad would love that. It looks terrible to me, but he would love that. And I read the recipe probably 15 times. It wasn't a long recipe. I just had to read it a bunch of times. And I was really sure it wouldn't work. I mean, I just read it. I'm like, this is not going to work. It kind of worked. It was not delicious. He loved it, but it was not delicious. And I after it was done baking, I said, I followed every single step in the recipe, full well knowing that this is not working. And I got exactly that. Mm-hmm. And so in my house, we have a signature dish called stuff in a pan, which is, I don't know what we're going to have for dinner. I'm going to put some stuff in a pan, see what happens. They pretty much always taste the same no matter what's in there because I don't spice that much.